Before Rome became an empire of marble and steel, before its legions thundered across continents, there was a moment when everything almost collapsed. A moment when the Romans looked at their own kings and whispered no more. They were farmers, soldiers, mothers, strangers, simple people with one simple fear, that power could destroy them. And so in 509 BC, they did something the ancient world had almost never seen. They stood up. They pushed back. They tore down a monarchy and built something entirely new. Tonight, we travel into that fragile beginning, the echoes of exile, the rise of the Senate and the quiet foundations laid by Romulus, Remus, and the earliest Romans. This is the story of how a kingdom died and a republic was born. You know, when we talk about Rome, we often imagine an empire, marble roads, towering arches, and golden eagles flying above mighty legions. But the truth is, Rome didn't begin with power. Rome began with fear. A fear so deep, so personal, that it pushed an entire people to overthrow their own king. And the story starts long before 509 BC. It starts with two brothers, standing beside a quiet river, arguing about a city that didn't even exist yet. Romulus and Remus, the first whisper of Rome. If you closed your eyes and stood in that valley, you would hear nothing but wind brushing through the grass. No soldiers, no senators. Just two boys, twin brothers, and who had survived the impossible. Remus once asked Romulus, "Do you really think a city can grow here?" Romulus didn't look at him. He was staring at the Palatine Hill, his jaw tight, eyes hard. "Not just a city," he whispered. "A home, a beginning." Now, we don't know if the conversation happened exactly like that, but history keeps fragments, and those fragments tell us that Rome started not with kings, but with an idea. A very fragile idea. Romulus would build the first walls. Remus would mock them, jump over them, and that moment of arrogance would cost him his life. Was it a murder? Was it an accident? No one knows. But Romans remembered one thing. Greatness demands sacrifice, sometimes even from family. After Remus died, Romulus stood alone. And alone, he became Rome's first king. But this isn't the story of his rule. This is the story of how kingship ended, and why Rome walked away from kings forever. The 7 kings, foundations built in silence. The early kings weren't tyrants, not at first. They gave Rome roads, temples, alliances, and laws. They were builders, not conquerors. But something strange happens when a throne stays too long in one family. Power begins to rot. By the time the 7th king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, sat on the throne, the rot was visible. He ruled with fear, with cruelty, with arrogance so thick that even the nobility whispered against him. The Senate, quiet men who once advised the kings, now felt like prisoners in their own chamber. And the people, their silence was louder than rebellion. Rome was breathing, but barely. Something had to break. The night that changed everything. There's a moment, a very specific moment, when Rome snapped. It wasn't a war. It wasn't a political debate. It wasn't a law. It was a tragedy, personal, heartbreaking, and unforgettable. A noblewoman named Lucretia was assaulted by the king's own son. When she gathered the senators and her family, her voice trembled. But she spoke clearly. "My body has been dishonored, but my spirit will not live with this shame." And then, before anyone could stop her, she took her own life. Silence. A silence so heavy that even the walls of Rome seemed to hold their breath. Her father collapsed. Her husband screamed. But one man, Lucius Junius Brutus, stepped forward with fire burning in his eyes. He looked at her lifeless body and said, "By this blood, Rome will never again be ruled by kings." That was it. The quiet anger of generations suddenly found its voice. Within days, the streets filled. Farmers left their fields. Soldiers walked away from their posts. Mothers stood beside fathers demanding justice. Rome rose, not like a mob, but like a tide. And the king? He fled. Yes, and the king of Rome, the man who thought he was untouchable, ran. Because he realized something too late. When an entire people decide to stand, a throne becomes very, very small. 509 BC, the birth of something new. With the king gone, Rome faced a question no one had ever asked before. If not a king, then who rules? Silence again. a different kind of silence. A silence of possibility. Brutus stepped forward. He proposed something radical, something the ancient world had almost never seen. A republic. A system where no man could hold absolute power. A government ruled by law, not by a throne. The Senate, once powerless, began to breathe again. 2 consuls would be elected each year. Their power would be limited. Temporary. Shared. Checks. Balances. Restrictions. Rome didn't trust individuals anymore. Rome trusted structure. And from that structure, the Republic was born. The first breath of the Senate. In the early days, the Senate wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a hall of marble. It was a group of exhausted men sitting in a dim room, trying to rebuild a nation from scratch. They argued. They disagreed. They shouted. Sometimes they even walked out. But that was exactly the point. Disagreement, not obedience, became Rome's strength. One senator once said, "We are not kings. We are guardians of order." Beautiful, isn't it? Not perfect, but beautiful. Rome was trying something no one had tried before. A government built on debate, not fear. The people, the quiet backbone. While the Senate argued, the people watched. The farmers, the blacksmiths, the mothers, the young men training with wooden shields, the merchants sitting in the market squares. For the first time, they felt like Rome belonged to them. A republic is not just a political system, it's a feeling, a belief that your voice matters. And for ordinary Romans, that feeling was new, strange, powerful. But calm never lasts long. In the early years of the Republic, Rome looked peaceful. But beneath that calm, something dangerous was growing. Whispers, rumors, votes being manipulated, senators forming alliances behind closed doors. The monarchy was gone. But ambition? Ambition never leaves. Even Brutus, the man who ended the monarchy, felt politics twisting around him like smoke. Rome had gained freedom, but freedom is fragile. The spirit of Romulus still lingers. Sometimes senators would look at the old Palatine Hill and wonder, did Romulus imagine this? Did he ever think his small city would overthrow kings? Did he ever worry that power would corrupt the next generation? We don't know. But the shadow of Romulus was always there. A reminder that everything Rome built came from one man's dream and one man's sacrifice. His story, even in silence, haunted the Republic, the foundations of Roman law. Early Rome didn't have polished laws, no fancy scrolls, no marble tablets, but they had principles, simple, raw human principles. Respect the gods, respect the land, respect the family, respect the city. Slowly, those principles became guidelines. Those guidelines became rules. And those rules started shaping the Republic. By 450 BC, Rome would carve laws onto bronze tablets, the famous 12 tables. But the seeds were planted here. In this fragile, uncertain moment after the monarchy fell, a new order begins. By the end of the 5th century BC, Rome wasn't strong yet, but it was stable, breathing, growing. The Senate had authority. The people had rights. The consuls had limits. Was it perfect? No, but Rome never wanted perfection. Rome wanted control. Control over power so that no man could become a king again. The Republic was a promise. A fragile promise. One that would define Rome for the next 5 centuries. And that promise began with exile. The fall of Rome's last king didn't just remove a tyrant. It created a vacuum. And vacuums are dangerous things. When Tarquin the Proud fled the city, Rome stood quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm. But before the next one, people looked at each other with uncertain eyes. A city without a king, in an ancient world ruled by monarchs and warlords. Rome suddenly felt like an orphan. But orphans grow tough. They learn to build their own protection, their own rules. And that is exactly what Rome began to do.
The weight of a new beginning.
Brutus and the early consuls were not celebrated heroes. They were exhausted men carrying a burden they barely understood. Someone once said, "Killing a king is easy. Replacing a king is hard." And Rome was learning that lesson fast. Every decision, from grain distribution to military command, to settling citizen disputes, was suddenly debated, voted on, revised, argued again. People were confused. Some even whispered, maybe a king wasn't that bad. But Brutus shut that door permanently. He passed a law, maybe the strictest law Rome ever had. No man in Rome shall ever again be called king, not in speech, not in dreams, not even in jest. Rome was rebuilding itself, brick by brick, law by law. The return of the exiled king, a threat from the shadows. Exiled kings don't disappear quietly. They wait. Pluck, whisper. And Tarquin the Proud was no different. He sent messages to allied cities. He promised gold. He demanded loyalty. And soon armies began to move. Rome was barely learning how to govern, and suddenly, it had to learn how to survive. The first great test of the Republic came faster than anyone expected. The Latin towns, the Etruscan kings, old rivals and old allies, all looked at Rome and wondered, can this newborn republic really defend itself? It was a fair question. Rome didn't know the answer either. The Battle of Silva Arzia, the price of freedom. In 509 BC, Tarquin returned with an army. Rome panicked, but Brutus didn't. He stood before the soldiers, farmers, craftsmen, shopkeepers, and said quietly, "The king returns to reclaim a throne that no longer exists." That line hit Rome's heart like fire. The battle was brutal. No grand strategies. Just shields smashing shields, and dust filling the air. Brutus met Tarquin's forces head-on. He didn't survive. Yes, the man who killed monarchy was killed defending the republic he created. When his body was carried back to the city, people didn't cry loudly. They cried in silence. A deeper kind of grief. Rome buried Brutus as a hero, but also as a warning. Freedom demands guardians, and guardians fall. The rise of public virtue. After Brutus's death, something unexpected happened. Ordinary people, the ones who sold vegetables, cleaned stables, tanned leather, began to feel responsible for Rome. It wasn't just the Senate's city anymore. It wasn't the consul's city. It belonged to everyone. Historians call this period the rise of virtues, a Roman idea that meant courage, duty, sacrifice for the common good. To Romans, virtus wasn't just bravery in battle. It was loyalty to something bigger than yourself, and the Republic needed that loyalty more than ever. The silent builders, working behind the scenes. While soldiers defended the borders, another group worked quietly, the lawmakers. They didn't wear armor. They didn't shout speeches. They didn't seek fame. But they shaped Rome more than any army ever could. They created rules for marriage, property, contracts, inheritance, farming, everything that made a society feel stable. A senator named Publius once said, "A nation survives not through victory, but through order." And Rome listened. New laws were debated, rewritten, rejected, approved. Slowly, Rome learned to govern itself. The chaos of kingship faded. The rhythm of the Republic began. The first terrifying crisis, the patricians versus the plebeians. But peace is always temporary. Inside Rome, a different kind of storm was growing. A silent war between the rich and the poor. The patricians, wealthy families, controlled the Senate. The plebeians, common people, had almost no political power. At first, people tolerated it. But as Rome grew, the imbalance became impossible to ignore. One plebeian farmer said during a debate, "We fight Rome's wars. We grow Rome's food. We build Rome's walls. But we do not have Rome's voice." That line spread through the city like wildfire. Plebeians began marching in crowds. They refused military service. They threatened to leave Rome entirely and form a new city. Yes, Romans almost split their own city in half. The Senate panicked. They were about to lose the backbone of their republic. So in desperation, they made a concession. A powerful one. The creation of the tribune of the plebs, a new office, held only by plebeians, with the sacred power to say one word, veto. And that one word could stop any law, any decision, even the Senate itself. For the first time in ancient history, ordinary people had real power. Rome didn't just avoid a civil war. It discovered something revolutionary. Shared power makes a nation stronger, not weaker. The whisper of destiny. Rome begins to expand. By the late 5th century BC, Rome was no longer a small town arguing with itself. It began looking outward. Neighboring tribes saw Rome rising and felt threatened. Rome saw threats and responded with preparation. The Republic wasn't an empire yet. but the personality was forming. A quiet ambition, a hunger for security, a belief that Rome should never again kneel to anyone. Every small victory fed that belief. Every settlement Rome absorbed added confidence. Every treaty added stability. And through it all, one idea grew stronger. Rome did not need a king. Rome was the king. A king made of laws, people, and purpose. The spirit of the early republic. If you walked through Rome around 450 BC, here's what you would see. Children practicing sword drills with wooden sticks, merchants calling out prices in narrow streets, senators arguing in the forum, priests performing rituals to keep the gods pleased, farmers discussing politics like seasoned philosophers, young men dreaming of military honor, old men remembering the days of kings, women managing households with fierce discipline. Life was not perfect, but it was alive. Rome felt like a city waking up, stretching, growing. The Republic wasn't smooth. It wasn't peaceful, but it was moving. And movement is life. The 12 tablets, the first true constitution. The plebeian protest didn't end. They pushed, demanded, fought for fairness, and eventually Rome agreed to do something historic. Engrave its laws publicly for all to see. No secrets, no manipulation, no hidden rules, just fairness. 12 bronze tablets were placed in the forum, laws about marriage, property, debts, justice. For the first time in history, a society made law stronger than class. People gathered around the tablets every morning. Some read slowly. Some ran their fingers across the lettering. Some whispered the laws to their children. It was more than metal. It was trust. The final echo, Rome leaves kings behind forever. By 400 BC, Rome looked nothing like the fragile city that had banished its king. It had a functioning senate, elected consuls, its tribunes protecting the people, written laws, had a growing army, expanding territory, a rising political identity, and most importantly, a belief that no single man should ever again hold absolute power. This belief would define Rome, shape Rome, strengthen Rome, and one day, eventually destroy Rome. But that part of the story comes much later. There's a strange thing about Rome, a truth most people don't notice until they dive deep into its history. Rome never wanted to conquer the world. It just refused to die. And sometimes, refusing to die makes you unstoppable. This chapter begins in a dark moment. Not with victory, not with expansion, but with fear. The night the Gauls came. The year was 390 BC. Rome was still young, still learning, still making mistakes. And then the sky over the northern hills filled with smoke. The Gauls, tall, wild-haired warriors from beyond the Alps, came down like a storm Rome never expected. People ran, children hid. The Italian patchwork, a land, waiting for a leader. Italy at that time was not one land. It was a puzzle, a messy one. North Etruscans, skilled, proud, old. South Greeks, wealthy, cultured, sharp-minded. Middle Latin tribes, sometimes friends, sometimes rivals. Mountains, Samnites, fierce, stubborn mountain fighters. Coastlines, small cities with big ambitions. Everyone wanted power. No one wanted peace. Into this chaos walked Rome. Not strong enough to dominate. Not weak enough to ignore. Just stubborn enough to keep standing and keep pushing. Even soldiers trembled. One Roman survivor later said, "They looked less like men and more like thunder wearing human skin." The Gauls crushed Rome's army at the river Allia. Then they marched into the city. Burned everything, except one hill, the Capitoline, where a handful of Romans held on, hungry, sleepless, desperate. Legend says the sacred geese screamed at night, waking the defenders, just in time to stop a surprise attack. True or not, it didn't matter. Rome was humiliated, burned, broken, bruised, and yet it did not die. In the ashes of their ruined homes, Romans made a vow, a quiet vow, spoken not in speeches, but in clenched teeth. Never again. Never again would Rome be caught unprepared. Never again would enemies walk freely through their streets. Never again would they bend. That vow changed everything. Rebuilding from ashes, you would expect a city burned to the ground to fall apart, to break, to lose spirit. Rome did the opposite. Before the ruins even cooled, people started rebuilding. With bare hands, with shattered tools, with tears that dried into determination. And while they rebuilt, the Senate made a decision so bold, so strange, that no other ancient nation would have dared it. Rome would not hide, not retreat behind walls, not fear the future. It would expand. Yes, a city that had just been destroyed decided to grow. One senator wrote, "If Rome fears the world, Rome ends. If Rome walks into the world, Rome begins." And Rome began walking. The birth of the legion, not a weapon but a mindset. Many people talk about the Roman legion as if it was a machine. Perfect, disciplined, cold. But the truth? It was human, flawed, emotional, built from fear, hope, revenge, pride. After the Gallic disaster, Rome rebuilt its army from scratch. Older soldiers trained younger ones. Fathers taught sons. Veterans showed scars and said, "This is what it costs to keep Rome alive." And from this culture of shared struggle, the legion was born. Not just a formation, not just tactics, not just steel. The legion was a mind, a belief, a rhythm of movement, a way of thinking in unison. Every soldier was a piece of a living body, moving, turning, striking as one. When enemies saw a Roman legion advancing, shields locked, sand rising behind them, they didn't just see soldiers, they saw purpose. Unshakable, unrelenting, unyielding. The Latin War, Rome versus its own reflection. Rome's first major step toward unifying Italy didn't begin with distant enemies. It began with their closest neighbors, the Latin League. These were not foreigners. These were cousins. Blood ties, shared gods, shared culture, but power always wants more power. The Latins demanded equality with Rome. Rome refused. A Latin commander once said, "If we cannot be Rome's equals, we will be Rome's masters." That line sparked war, a brutal war, a confusing war, brother against brother. Old alliances shattered, new loyalties formed in the middle of battle. But Rome won, not because it was stronger, but because it was more stubborn. And after the war, Rome did something unusual. It did not destroy the Latin League. It embraced it, gave some cities citizenship, gave others alliances, gave all of them a place in Rome's expanding world. Rome learned something fundamental. Conquest builds enemies. Inclusion builds Rome. The Samnite Wars, Rome meets its mirror. Then came the real test. The Samnites, mountain people, hard people, people who fought like wolves, fast, unpredictable, fearless. Where Rome fought in formation, the Samnites fought in chaos. Where Rome relied on discipline, the Samnites relied on instinct. And for the first time, Rome struggled. One Roman general wrote, "The Samnites are what we fear becoming, warriors without laws." The wars lasted decades, 3 full wars, generations of blood. Rome lost battles, lost men, lost pride, and then the disaster. The Caudine Forks, Rome's most humiliating moment. Romans marched into a valley, believing they were hunting Samnites. Instead, they were trapped. No escape, no defense. The Samnites surrounded them and demanded something humiliating. Roman soldiers had to walk under a yoke, a wooden frame symbolizing slavery and defeat. It was worse than death. Young soldiers cried. Officers clenched their fists till nails bled. No one spoke. As they walked under the yoke, the Samnites mocked them, laughed at them, called Rome weak. But Rome did not break. Humiliation became fuel, shame became fire. One soldier whispered, "Remember this day, remember this pain. We will return." And Rome returned, with discipline sharpened by suffering, with strategies refined by failure, with a legion that moved like iron wind. Rome defeated the Samnites, not quickly, not easily, but inevitably. And once the mountain fighters fell, Italy trembled. A new Rome emerges. By now, a pattern had formed. Rome didn't win because of luck, or numbers, or geography. Rome won because it refused to stay defeated. Every loss created a better Rome. Every humiliation became a lesson. Every near-death experience made the Republic harder. And as Rome expanded, something else was happening quietly. Roads were being built, alliances woven, laws extended, citizenships granted, troops shared between cities. Rome wasn't conquering Italy. Rome was absorbing it, turning enemies into partners, turning partners into Romans. By 280 BC, Rome controlled almost all of Italy, not by exterminating its rivals, but by converting them into pieces of a larger destiny. Then came the Greeks, Rome's most elegant enemy. Southern Italy was full of Greek colonies. Wealthy, brilliant, educated, they looked at Rome the way a university professor looks at an ambitious teenager, with respect, but also with a hint of arrogance. And when Rome interfered in southern disputes, the Greeks laughed. One Greek statesman said, "Romans are farmers with swords. They do not understand the art of war." They regretted saying that, because the Greeks brought in a king, a warrior philosopher named Pyrrhus of Epirus, one of the greatest generals of the ancient world. His army had elephants. Rome had never seen elephants. Men froze. Horses panicked. Formations broke. Pyrrhus won battles, but each victory cost him dearly. So dearly that he reportedly said, "Another victory like this, and I am ruined." A Pyrrhic victory, they call it now. Rome refused to surrender, refused to fear the unknown, refused to accept defeat. Eventually, Pyrrhus left Italy, exhausted, impressed, and shaken. He told his soldiers, "If I had Romans for soldiers, I would conquer the world." That says everything. By 264 BC, Rome stands alone, unbroken, unchallenged, master of Italy. Not a king, not an empire, not yet, but something greater. A republic hardened by fire, trained by defeat, united by shared purpose, protected by a legion that moved like thunder. Rome didn't just unify Italy. Rome forged itself. They say every great empire is built long before anyone realizes it. And for Rome, that empire was forged not in marble halls or royal chambers, but in dust, in sweat, in the echo of marching feet across the Italian hills. By the time Rome began claiming the lands beyond Latium, one truth became painfully clear. Their old way of fighting, the slow, rigid Greek-style phalanx, it wasn't enough. The mountains were too steep, the valleys too scattered, the enemies too unpredictable. Rome needed something new, something faster, more flexible, more human. And so, slowly, almost quietly, the Roman legion was born. Ask any historian today and they'll say the same thing. The legion wasn't just an army, it was Rome itself, walking on two legs. But back then, no one saw that destiny. They just saw young farmers, blacksmiths, shepherds, potters, ordinary men tightening their sandals before heading into battles. They barely understood the transformation. One Roman writer described it years later. "We did not create the legion in a moment. We became it, one blood-soaked lesson at a time." At first, the system was simple. Men were arranged by wealth and age, the rich in the front with heavy armor, the poor in the back with light weapons. But the Samnites, the mountain warriors of central Italy, they taught Rome a brutal lesson. Their quick hit-and-run attacks shredded the old formations. The Romans fell. Many died. But Rome had something others did not. A stubborn, almost frightening refusal to accept defeat. They studied the Samnites, copied their flexible formation, and reshaped it with Roman discipline, Roman precision, Roman obsession. This was the beginning of the manipular formation, the backbone of the future legion. Instead of one giant block, they divided the army into small units that could move independently. Young soldiers in front, experienced men behind them, veterans at the last line, the hardened, silent ones who never stepped back. Now, Rome didn't fight like a wall. They fought like a living organism, a mother's fear. There's an old story, maybe true, maybe not, about a Roman mother watching her son leave for war. She asked him, "Will you come back?" He answered, not with arrogance, but with a quiet fire in his eyes. "Mother, Rome stands so that I may live, and I fight so that Rome may stand." It was this mindset, this strange mix of duty, pride, fear, and hope, that made the legion unstoppable, training that broke men and made legends. Training wasn't heroic, it was brutal. Before sunrise, recruits lifted weights made of stone. They practiced with wooden swords twice as heavy as the real ones. They marched until their legs trembled, 25 miles a day, sometimes more. The centurion's voice echoed across the field. "Again! Faster! Hold the line!" No excuses. No softness. No shortcuts. There was a saying in Rome, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in war, and Rome lived by it, the legion's soul. Every soldier carried a gladius short sword, a pilum heavy throwing spear, a scutum large curved shield. But the real weapon wasn't steel, it was unity. When they raised their shields together, it sounded like thunder. When they moved, each footstep struck the earth like a heartbeat. They weren't a group of fighters. They were one creature, one mind, one purpose. Enemies who saw them approach often described the same thing. It felt like the ground itself was marching toward us. Rome claims Italy. With their new formation and relentless discipline, Rome tore through the Italian peninsula. The Etruscans to the north fell. The Samnites, after decades of bloody war, submitted. The Greek cities of southern Italy, rich, ancient, proud, couldn't withstand the Roman machine. By 264 BC, Rome stood as the undisputed master of Italy. But standing on their new land, looking across the sea at new horizons, the Romans felt something they had never felt before. Ambition. The kind that doesn't whisper, the kind that roars. Italy was conquered. But the world? The world was still waiting. And Rome was ready. Victory changes a nation, sometimes gently, sometimes violently. For Rome, the transformation was neither gentle nor violent. It was something in between. A slow, heavy realization that they were no longer just a city fighting for survival. They were becoming something bigger, something dangerous. After conquering Italy, the Romans didn't celebrate wildly. They didn't rest. They didn't even slow down. They simply looked south, north, and west, toward lands they had only heard stories about, and whispered to themselves, "What's next?" It wasn't arrogance. Not yet. It was hunger. Raw, unsettling hunger. The weight of victory. There's a story from this time about a Roman commander walking through the camp after a major battle. Tents torn, shields cracked, the smell of smoke still hanging in the air. He saw a young soldier crying quietly beside a dying friend, and he sat next to him not as a general but as a man. The boy whispered, "Was it worth it? All this blood, just for land?" The commander didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said softly, "No one fights only for land. We fight so our children can walk through their land without fear." That was Rome. Brutal, yes, but always with a reason, a purpose, a fire that frightened even themselves. The changing heart of Rome. As new territories were conquered, Rome grew richer. Trade routes expanded, war loot poured in. New allies, forced or willing, sent men and money to Rome. But with growth came tension. The Senate grew more powerful. Old families fought for influence. Young officers dreamed of glory. And the people? They watched all this with nervous pride. Rome was rising. Too fast, maybe, but no one dared slow it down. Even farmers in distant villages said the same thing. We are Romans now, and we are not afraid. The legion evolves again. With each new campaign, the Roman army became sharper, smarter, harder. Legions learned to fight in forests, swamps, rocky hills, open plains. They built roads behind them as they marched, as if stitching Italy together with stone threads. When a legion passed through a village, children counted the footsteps laughing, while old men felt the ground tremble and whispered, "This is power." Rome no longer fought like a desperate city. They fought like a nation preparing for something far greater than Italy, something beyond imagination. Whispers across the sea. Merchants coming from the west brought stories. Stories of a powerful city across the Mediterranean. A wealthy ancient trading giant, a city called Carthage. They ruled the sea. They controlled trade. Their navy filled the horizon like a forest of masts. Some Romans grew uneasy. Some grew excited. One senator famously said, "One day Rome and Carthage must face each other. The world is too small for both." It wasn't a threat. It was a prophecy. The seeds of the Punic Wars, the greatest wars Rome would ever fight, were beginning to grow. But in 264 BC, Rome didn't know that yet. They only felt a strange pull, a destiny forming just beyond the waves. A soldier's night before war. There's a small passage written by an unknown soldier around this time. Historian later found it scratched on a clay tablet. He wrote, "Oh, tonight I cannot sleep. The sea is quiet, but my heart is loud. I do not know who we will fight tomorrow. I only know that Rome is watching, and I cannot fail. It wasn't poetry. It was fear and duty, and the weight of a rising empire on ordinary shoulders. Why Rome was unstoppable. Historians often argue about this. Was it discipline? Strategy? Luck? But the real answer is simpler. Rome became unstoppable because they refused to stay defeated. Every loss became a lesson. Every enemy became a teacher. Every victory became a stepping stone. And with Italy united behind them, the Romans felt something they had never felt before. Invincibility, a dangerous feeling, but also the fuel needed to build the greatest empire the world had ever seen. The final step before the Great Wars. By 264 BC, Rome stood at a crossroads. Behind them, centuries of struggle, exile, humiliation, and blood. Ahead of them, a future filled with battles that would shake the world. But in that moment, standing on the shores of Italy, soldiers and senators alike felt the same wind, dry and warm, coming from across the sea. A wind carrying the scent of foreign ports, new enemies, new destinies. Rome's greatest challenges hadn't arrived yet. But Rome was ready, more ready than any nation had ever been. Because they had built an army out of ordinary men. They had built unity out of broken tribes. They had built discipline out of necessity. And in the silence before the storm, the world waited. By 264 BC, Italy was no longer a patchwork of warring tribes. It was Rome's land. Every hill, every valley, every river bore the footprints of Roman soldiers. The legion had become more than an army. It was a living symbol of discipline, unity, and sheer persistence. Young farmers and blacksmiths had become hardened veterans. Ordinary men had turned into the backbone of an empire, the Senate's quiet triumph. Back in Rome, the Senate convened in the marbled chambers. Voices echoed against stone walls heavy with the scent of wax and ink. Some senators celebrated silently, aware of the gravity of their accomplishment. Italy had been unified. The Republic stood stronger than any king could have dreamed. One elder spoke slowly, almost whispering. "We have built more than roads and walls. We have built a future, one that will outlast us all." Others nodded, thinking of the endless work ahead. Governing new territories, securing loyalty, preparing for the storms yet to come. Legionaries at rest. In the camps, soldiers tended to their wounds, polished their armor, and wrote letters home. A young recruit, barely 16, stared at the horizon, thinking of the mother he left behind. Italy is ours. But is Rome ready for what waits beyond? He didn't know the answer. No one did. But each soldier felt a subtle change in the air, a tension that whispered, the world beyond Italy would test them, and Rome would have to rise even higher. The seeds of Carthage. Merchants and scouts brought tales from across the sea. Carthage, wealthy, proud, and powerful, loomed on the horizon. Its navy dominated the Mediterranean. Its walls gleamed with the spoils of trade, and its armies were formidable. For the first time, Rome looked outward with cautious anticipation. Italy was secure, but the future, the world, was not. The elder centurion muttered to his men as they cleaned their swords. "We have conquered Italy, but the true trial waits across the waters." And in those words, a chill ran through the camp. A foreboding. A thrill. Rome was ready, but destiny always tests even the strongest. A moment of reflection. The soldiers gathered at dusk, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows over the hills. They had fought, bled, and endured, and yet a strange silence filled the air. No cheers, no celebrations, just the wind through the olive trees, the faint cry of an owl, and the steady heartbeat of an empire still growing. In that quiet moment, every man knew Italy was just the beginning. The legion was unstoppable, but the challenges ahead would demand more than courage. They would demand the soul of Rome itself. Closing the chapter. Chapter 2 closes with the Republic standing tall, unified, and disciplined. Rome had learned, adapted, and conquered. The legion had been tested and tempered. Italy was Roman, and yet the horizon promised greater trials, larger battles, and a clash with powers that would shape the course of history. The calm before the storm. Rome's
The sea had always been a highway and a battlefield. Its waves whispered stories of merchants and marauders, of kings and their ambitions. Rome, now master of Italy, looked beyond the hills and rivers. Across the shimmering Mediterranean, Carthage waited. a city of wealth, walls, and a navy that could block any port. And there was Hannibal, a young general, fierce, cunning, already spoken of in whispers from Spain to Africa. Rome had heard the rumors, the tales of his audacity, but no one could predict the storm he would bring. The Senate convened in the marbled halls, voices rising, falling. Some spoke of strategy, some of pride, some of fear. We have conquered Italy, now the sea calls. Carthage is no longer just a threat, it is a challenge we cannot ignore.
Others nodded silently, knowing that war across water demanded more than courage. It demanded patience, discipline,
And the souls of the men who would fight. In the camps, soldiers polished their armor, tightened their straps, and whispered prayers to the gods. Young recruits shivered, not from the cold, but from anticipation. Will we meet them at sea or on their shores? We must, or Italy will be meaningless. The older soldiers said nothing. They remembered Sicily, the campaigns, the lessons of Italy. They had learned to fight as one, to endure hunger, mud, blood, and death. Yet even they felt the weight of what lay ahead. Hannibal, far across the sea, was no stranger to these feelings. At Carthage, he stood on the cliffs of the harbor, watching the horizon with sharp eyes. He knew Rome would come. He knew their ambition, and he grinned. Not because he was cruel, but because he loved the challenge. They think the sea will save them. They think Italy made them invincible. We will teach them otherwise. The first battles were not glorious. Ships clashed with wood, iron, and fire. The sea roared, the wind cut like knives, and men screamed. Every commander knew that the outcome of these skirmishes would shape the memory of nations. Fast. Their formations changed. Tactics evolved. Every loss became a lesson. Every victory a warning. Meanwhile on land, Hannibal's plans were already in motion. His ambition was not just to defend Carthage, it was to strike, to terrorize, to force Rome to fear. He knew the power of a well-placed army, the shock of cavalry from the mountains, and the courage of men who believed they were fighting for something greater than themselves. In Rome, letters arrived from the front. Reports of ships lost, ports blockaded, villages raided. The people read them with rising panic and awe. News traveled fast. Stories of Hannibal's bravery and cruelty, his intellect and unpredictability. The Senate debated. Every voice weighed carefully. No one could underestimate this young Carthaginian, yet no one dared show fear. "We are Romans," one senator finally said. "We do not bow. We do not flee. We endure, and we will prevail." And so they prepared. The stage was set for decades of struggle, for blood, salt, fire, and glory. The first campaign in Sicily tested the young legionaries. Hunger gnawed at their bellies. Disease shadowed their steps. And every night, the wind carried strange sounds, waves crashing, distant cries, the whisper of the enemy. Yet in the silence, some found hope, some found courage. If Rome cannot be broken by land, then neither shall she fall by sea. It was this belief, fragile and human, that would carry them through the First Punic War, through setbacks, fear, and despair, through victories that came at a cost almost too high to bear. Hannibal watched too. He sent scouts, spies, and envoys. Every decision, every march, every clash of swords mattered. The Mediterranean became not just a body of water, but a chessboard, and the pieces were human. Lives. Men, young and old, knew nothing of strategy or politics. They only knew hunger, fatigue, blood, and duty. And through them, Rome's destiny began to be written. One ship, one soldier, one battle at a time. The storm of the Mediterranean. Hannibal crossed the Alps. The mountains were cruel. Snow, rock, and wind tore at men and animals alike. Yet he moved forward. Carthage demanded audacity. And Hannibal, he was audacity incarnate. Every step brought suffering. Every soldier carried hope and fear together. Some cursed. Some simply marched, silent, enduring. "Keep moving," Hannibal whispered almost to himself. "Rome will feel the weight of our determination. Every mountain, every river, every drop of blood counts." And so the Alps became a forge, shaping not only men, but legends. Meanwhile, Rome was shaken. Reports arrived daily, growing more terrifying. Elephants on Italian soil, swift cavalry, audacious attacks. Senators paced in marble halls, citizens whispered in fear. The Republic had never faced such a threat. Yet among the chaos, a new figure emerged. Scipio Africanus, young, brilliant, fearless. Where others saw danger, he saw opportunity. Where others panicked, he planned. Hannibal is cunning, he said to his men. But Rome has patience, endurance, and the courage of its people. We will meet him, we will stop him.
And we will rise. The battles raged. Cannae, Trebia, Lake Trasimene. Names that would echo through history, heavy with blood and grief. Romans fell, yet their spirit did not break. The dead were mourned, their bravery honored, and each loss became fuel for the fire of vengeance. Hannibal's army moved like a shadow across Italy. Cities fortified. Every Roman general faced impossible choices. Fight, flee, negotiate, all while under Hannibal's relentless pressure. The human cost was immense. Mothers cried for sons, children hid from soldiers, and ordinary men carried the weight of an empire on their backs. Yet through it all, Rome endured. Patience, discipline, and sheer stubbornness became weapons as deadly as swords. Scipio's brilliance became Rome's hope. He studied Hannibal like a chess master studying a rival. Every move, every march, every supply line was scrutinized. He trained his soldiers, built alliances, and learned the art of psychological warfare. Carthage believes they can frighten us, he said. Let them. Fear makes men predictable, and predictable men we can defeat. Years passed. The Punic Wars dragged on, stretching across land and sea. Rome built fleets, trained sailors, and mastered naval warfare. Hannibal fought, conquered, and survived against all odds. But slowly, the tide began to turn. Every battle, every maneuver tested human endurance, courage, and the will to survive. Sacrifices were made that no history book could fully capture. Young men cutting their own ties to family, older men risking everything for the Republic, mothers sending sons to war they would never see again. Then came the moment that would define the war. Scipio Africanus brought the fight to Carthage. The city that had seemed untouchable, unassailable, now faced Rome on its home ground. Hannibal returned from Italy, but the war had changed. Rome had adapted, and Rome had endurance. The sea, the sands, every drop of blood spilled. It will all matter, Scipio said quietly to his men. Victory is not born in a day. It is forged in years of struggle, sweat, and courage. The final battle approached. Carthage, proud and wealthy, stood tall. Romans marched with the memory of fallen comrades in their hearts. The Mediterranean waves bore witness to the storm. Men fought with desperation and honor. Elephants thundered, cavalry charged, swords clashed. Smoke rose, blood soaked the earth. And through it all, the human stories shone. The fear, the bravery, the fleeting moments of hope, the unbearable grief. By the end, Carthage was defeated, its navy destroyed. And Rome rose as master of the Mediterranean. But every victory came at a cost. Families torn apart, young men gone, entire cities in ruins. History remembers the generals, the strategies, the legions, but the souls of those who endured, the mothers, the soldiers, the citizens, these were the true bearers of Rome's triumph. The Republic had survived, and the Mediterranean had been mastered, yet the echoes of war lingered. The streets of Rome were filled with silence, mourning, and the hard lessons of ambition and courage. Men who had fought for glory now understood its price. Hannibal had tested Rome beyond measure. Scipio had answered with brilliance. And humanity, fearful, brave, flawed, yet unyielding, carried the Republic forward. The seeds of corruption. Rome had reached heights that few imagined. The streets gleamed with marble. Markets overflowed with grain from Africa. The Republic had conquered lands that stretched beyond the horizon. But inside, cracks began to form. The Senate, once a body of honor and duty, now murmured with ambition. Voices whispered, alliances shifted, and loyalty became a currency more fragile than silver. Power is not taken, it is seized, one senator muttered, leaning back in his chair, fingers drumming the cold marble.
and those who hesitate will be forgotten. Among the rising stars of Rome, 3 names would come to define this era: Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Cicero. Caesar was brilliant, daring, and impatient. Pompey was proud, experienced, and fiercely protective of his legacy. Cicero, the voice of reason, wielded words as weapons, sharp and precise. Desired immortality, not in the hearts of citizens, but in the history that would be written. Corruption spread like smoke in the forum. Judges accepted bribes. Generals stretched their commands beyond law. The people cheered triumphs, yet whispered doubts behind closed doors. And in every villa, palace, and senate chamber, ambition twisted hearts. Rome has grown too vast, an old patrician said. And the Republic? Perhaps it is no longer enough. He did not know how prophetic his words were. In the alleys and streets, ordinary citizens felt the tremors of change. Taxes grew heavier. Grain shortages stirred unrest. The poor looked upon the wealthy, and envy took root. Yet they had little choice but to trust the Republic. Trust the Senate. Trust the men who claimed to act for Rome, even when ambition glimmered like fire behind their eyes. Caesar moved with calculated precision. Campaign, every speech, every alliance was a step toward power. He understood Rome's appetite for spectacle, for glory, for heroes. The people love a man who dares, he whispered to his confidants. Let Pompey command respect, but I will command hearts. Pompey, sensing the rising tide of Caesar's influence, gathered his own allies. Veterans of the East, loyal governors, men who owed their fortunes to him. Rome will not be ruled by one, he declared, voice ringing through the forum. We are guardians, not pawns. And Cicero watched. He observed, carefully weighing words, gauging sentiment, and writing letters that might sway opinion or expose ambition. He understood that the Republic was in peril, but even the sharpest rhetoric could not always bend human desire. Ambition, he murmured, is the shadow that walks beside every man of power. Ignore it, and it consumes you. The stage was set for civil strife. What began as subtle corruption, secret alliances, and whispered threats would soon escalate into open confrontation. Rome's greatest triumphs now cast long shadows. The glory of the Republic was entwined with its decay. In the provinces, governors began to act with increasing autonomy. Armies grew loyal not to the Republic, but to men with ambition and vision. Soldiers marched for pay, for prestige, and sometimes for promises of land and legacy. Rome's heart beats, but to whom? An officer asked. To the Senate? Or to men who chase power at any cost? No one had a clear answer. The streets echoed with unrest. The poor rioted in marketplaces. The wealthy patricians whispered in shadowed halls. Every corner, every temple, every villa bore witness to the tension. The Republic is strong, a magistrate insisted, though his voice trembled, and yet the foundations crack. At night, when the forum was silent and the torches cast flickering shadows on marble statues, ambition whispered. It spoke to the young, hungry, and daring. It spoke to Caesar in his villa, plotting, calculating, dreaming. It spoke to Pompey in his chamber, planning, rallying, preparing. And it spoke to Cicero in the candlelight, crafting words that could cut deeper than any sword. The shadows of ambition had arrived in Rome, and they would not leave until the Republic itself was tested to its breaking point. Edge. Rome, once united under law and duty, now trembled under ambition. The streets were alive with whispers of deals, favors, and betrayals. The Republic's institutions, carefully built over centuries, groaned under the weight of personal ambition. Julius Caesar had returned from Gaul, victorious and celebrated. He had conquered tribes, rivers, and mountains, yet what he craved most was influence in Rome itself. The soldiers obeyed him, and the Senate, wary yet powerless, could only watch. Pompey, once Rome's hero of the East, felt the tide shifting. He had once stood above all men in prestige and command. Now, he saw Caesar rising, faster, bolder, unstoppable. Rome cannot be ruled by one man, Pompey declared in the Senate. We must protect the Republic before ambition swallows it whole. Yet ambition, like a shadow, does not wait for permission. Cicero, the voice of reason, watched both men with concern. He had always believed in the power of words, law, and civic duty. But words alone could not restrain men who hungered for power. The Republic is a fragile vessel, he said quietly. And every man who seeks glory without restraint risks shattering it. The first triumvirate was formed: Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. 3 men united not by friendship, but by convenience and ambition, commanded loyalty, wealth, and political influence. Together they held the Republic's fate in their hands. Yet their unity was delicate. Each man's desire for legacy, recognition, and supremacy created invisible cracks. Rome's citizens cheered Caesar's triumphs. They admired Pompey's legacy. They respected Cicero's eloquence. But beneath the applause, tension simmered. The Senate struggled to maintain authority. The provinces watched, uncertain who truly ruled. And soldiers, ever loyal to their generals, awaited orders that could pit them against fellow Romans. In private chambers, strategies were whispered. Letters were sent, alliances negotiated, threats veiled in politeness. The Republic's daily business became a battlefield of intrigue. "We have conquered lands, yes," Caesar mused to a trusted officer. "But Rome itself, may be harder to conquer than Gaul." Pompey, sensing danger, fortified his political base. He relied on veterans, supporters, and senators who feared Caesar's rise. Every move was careful, calculated, yet every step carried risk. Cicero, torn between loyalty to law and fear of civil war, wrote letters pleading for moderation. He urged compromise. He warned of bloodshed. He tried to remind men that the Republic was more than one ambitious man. "Ambition unchecked," he wrote, "is a blade that cuts all, even its wielder." The people could sense the tension. Markets whispered rumors. Temples echoed with prayers for peace. Factions formed in every corner. Supporters of Caesar, loyalists to Pompey, senators clinging to tradition. And through it all, Rome waited, precariously. The Republic had never felt so fragile, so alive with potential, so on the edge of collapse. In 49 BC, the tipping point came. Caesar, crossing the Rubicon, defied the Senates. It was a simple act, with profound consequences. The die is cast. Soldiers marched, citizens panicked, and Rome's streets became a theater of destiny. The Republic was at war, not against a foreign enemy, but against itself. The first triumvirate's delicate balance shattered. Crassus had already fallen, killed in Parthia, leaving Caesar and Pompey as rivals. Their previous alliance dissolved into hostility, and the Senate scrambled to contain chaos. Every decision mattered. Every general, senator, and citizen was swept into the tides of history. Rome's glory, its wealth, its culture, its laws, all would be tested in blood and fire. The psychological toll was immense. Men slept uneasily. Families feared for sons who marched under banners of ambition. Elders grieved silently as friends turned against friends. Every step toward victory carried a shadow of loss. Rome is not a city of walls, Cicero lamented, and hearts are fragile. As Caesar advanced, Pompey retreated, seeking support from loyal provinces. Every engagement, every march, every negotiation shifted the Republic closer to civil war. The Mediterranean world watched, awed and anxious. Rome, once master of Italy and beyond, now faced its most dangerous enemy, itself. The era of shadows had arrived. Ambition, corruption, and factionalism consumed the very foundation of the Republic. Yet through it all, Rome's spirit, human, flawed, enduring, persisted. The Republic may falter, Cicero wrote, but it lives in the courage, the duty, and the resilience of those who still believe in it. And so, the stage was set. The die had been cast. The Republic would never be the same again. The Rubicon and the fall of the Republic. The winter of 49 BC was cold. Caesar stood on the northern banks of the Rubicon. Behind him, the loyal soldiers waited, tense, silent. Ahead of him lay Rome, a city of law, tradition, and countless memories. He knew the law forbade any general from entering the city with an army. To do so was treason, punishable by death. But Caesar did not hesitate. "The die is cast," he whispered. "Fortune favors the bold." And with that, he crossed the river. The Republic trembled. The Senate panicked. Pompey fled south, gathering forces, hoping to confront Caesar before Rome itself fell. The streets of Rome echoed with uncertainty. Citizens whispered in fear. Merchants closed shops. Temples were silent, as if the gods themselves held their breath. Every step of Caesar's army was a statement. The old rules no longer applied. The Republic,
Centuries in the making, teetered on the edge.
civil war erupted. Caesar's brilliance on the battlefield was unmatched. Every march, every engagement showcased not just military genius, but psychological mastery. He understood fear, loyalty, and the hearts of men. Pompey, once invincible, now struggled to contain the rising tide. The Senate, divided and hesitant, could only watch as their authority crumbled. Rome, the eternal city, felt the first true cracks. The Republic's ideals, liberty, representation, justice, were overshadowed by ambition and blood. Men who once called themselves defenders of law now raised swords against neighbors, friends, even kin. "I fight not for glory," Caesar said to a close officer. "I fight for the future of Rome, even if Rome does not yet understand what that means." Victory followed victory. Pompey fled to Egypt, hoping to regroup, but he met his end on foreign soil. Shores. The Senate's power waned. Rome's streets echoed with both jubilation and dread. The Republic was alive, yet it was dying. The ideals of the past survived only in whispers and memory. But the human cost was immense. Soldiers mourned comrades. Families grieved sons. Every victory carried shadow, and every triumph carried the weight of loss. Caesar emerged as master of Rome, yet ambition never sleeps. He reformed laws, expanded citizenship, and centralized power. Yet whispers of envy and fear grew louder. Some feared not a general, but a king in disguise. "Beware the Ides of March," warned friends. "Fortune may favor you today, but fate spares no man." On March 15, 44 BC, Caesar faced the ultimate betrayal. Assassins, men he once trusted, stabbed him on the Senate floor. The city erupted, shock, grief, and chaos. The Republic seemed poised to collapse entirely. The chaos. One figure watched carefully. Octavian. The young heir, later Augustus, understood both politics and patience. He navigated the aftermath of Caesar's death with strategy and foresight. Alliances were forged. Enemies were outmaneuvered. Courage and cunning intertwined as Rome slowly shifted from republic to empire. Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, entered this stage with her own ambitions. Allies and lovers, politics and passion, her story intertwined with Rome's fate. The Mediterranean, once a stage for war and conquest, now became a theater of diplomacy, intrigue, and romance. "Power," she said, "is never given.
It is claimed, nurtured, and wielded."
By 27 BC, Octavian had emerged victorious. The Republic, fractured and exhausted, gave way to a new order. Rome was no longer ruled by assemblies and senators alone. The empire had dawned. Yet the shadows of ambition, sacrifice, and human desire persisted. Every victory was built on toil and blood. Every reform carried echoes of past ideals, now reshaped by reality. The story of Rome had reached a turning point. From the crossing of the Rubicon, through civil war, through betrayal and brilliance, a single thread persisted: humanity. The fear, courage, love, and ambition of men and women shaped the destiny of the world's greatest city. Rome, eternal and flawed, stood ready for a new era. The Republic had fallen, the empire would rise, and the lessons of ambition, power, and human nature would echo for centuries. The dawn of the empire, death. Rome was a city in turmoil. The streets echoed with grief and fear. The Senate, weakened and hesitant, tried to reassert control, but the balance of power had shifted. Octavian, barely 20, understood the fragile thread upon which Rome now hung. He was cautious, calculating, yet bold where it mattered. He knew that survival alone would not suffice. He had to master politics, manipulate alliances, and win the hearts of the people. Mark Antony, a loyal general of Caesar, sought to claim leadership. Together, Antony and Octavian faced the chaos left by betrayal and murder. Their alliance, though uneasy, was crucial. They needed to consolidate power before Rome tore itself apart. The Republic dies not in a day, Octavian thought, but it falls with every misstep, every compromise, every shadowed betrayal. Meanwhile, Cleopatra returned to the Mediterranean stage. Her intellect, charm, and ambition were unmatched. Her alliance with Caesar had altered the course of Rome before, and now her influence loomed over Octavian and Antony alike. She was not merely a queen, she was a player in Rome's destiny. Antony fell for Cleopatra, captivated by both her presence and strategy. Their union, political and passionate, threatened Octavian's rise. Rome watched, divided. The East and West, loyalty and ambition, love and power, all collided. "I am not a woman to be tamed," Cleopatra said to Antony. "I shape my fate as you shape yours. Together, we can command the world or destroy it." Octavian, patient and calculating, moved silently but decisively. He built alliances, spread propaganda, and positioned himself as the defender of Rome's values. Every word, every gesture, every coin minted was a step toward domination. Civil war loomed. The Battle of Actium became inevitable. The Mediterranean, once a theater of trade and diplomacy, now burned with the clash of empires. The fleets met. Waves crashed, sails tore, and the sky seemed to shiver under the roar of war. Antony fought bravely, but Cleopatra's fleet, meant to support him, ultimately retreated. Octavian's strategy was precise, his timing impeccable. When the smoke cleared, Antony and Cleopatra were defeated. Their reign in Egypt ended not in glory, but in tragedy. Antony, consumed by despair, took his own life. Cleopatra, refusing captivity, followed him, and with her death, the legacy of their reign ceased to be. Egypt's independence crumbled. Octavian returned to Rome, victorious. The Senate, the people, the army, all hailed him as the undisputed leader. Yet he did not declare himself king. He cloaked power in republican language, presenting reforms as service to Rome, not personal ambition. "I found Rome a city of chaos," Octavian said. "I leave it a city of order." But the heart of Rome, that remains with its people. In 27 BC, Octavian accepted the title Augustus. The Roman Empire was born. The Republic had ended, but Rome endured, stronger, unified, and expansive. The laws, the armies, and the culture evolved under Augustus's guidance. Yet the lessons of ambition, betrayal, and human desire remained. Every corner of the empire bore witness to courage, fear, love, and the relentless pursuit of power. Rome's transformation was complete. From the Rubicon to Actium, from Caesar to Augustus, history had unfolded with both grandeur and tragedy. The Republic's ideals were remembered, but the empire's might had begun. History remembers not the fall of men, Cicero had once written, but the rise and endurance of the spirit that builds, rules, and dreams beyond its time. And in that enduring spirit, the Roman Empire would echo for centuries, a testament to human endurance, ambition, resilience, and the complexities of power. If the story of Rome, its ambition, its triumphs, and its tragedies has moved you, don't just let it pass. Hit the subscribe button and join us on this journey through history. Turn on notifications so you never miss the echoes of the past. And share this story with someone who loves to feel the heartbeat of history. Because every empire, every hero, every moment is meant to be remembered.